Welcome back, and welcome to part 4 of the Feedback Masterclass video series brought to you by Mote. So as we've explored in the previous 3 videos, as we dug into why feedback, the various types of feedback, create impactful feedback, now we're on to phase 4, where we're going to examine some of the key obstacles and challenges that you and students might face when you're providing feedback on their work. So there's 3 ideas that we're going to explore. We'll explore them in enough depth so you can use these kind of key ideas around challenges and obstacles and start to rethink how you might structure feedback from your students so you can remove these barriers, and with the whole goal and intention of creating feedback that can be implemented by your students, it can be understood, and can be actionable. So again, they can always move the demonstration of their understanding through the work they're creating closer to that learning target and kind of diminishing that gap between where they might be and where we want them to end up. So with that, let's look at challenge or obstacle number 1. So the first one is decoding. Now the challenge here is that the language, the vocabulary that we're using inside of our feedback, students might simply not understand the language, the vocab, or the suggestions that we're making, that we're providing in the feedback. So it's critical to keep that in mind. While we might have as educators language that we're comfortable using, terminology and phrases that we're comfortable using, students might not understand exactly what we mean by those ideas. So how can this be remedied? We might explain certain terminology and language and provide that up front to our learners. Or we might just always really focus and have clear intention on using really accessible language until we kind of develop the capacity and the time and the understanding so students can understand some of the terminology that we might be using. So keep the student ability to decode your feedback in the back of your mind when you're creating these feedback opportunities for them. Challenge or obstacle number 2 is implementation. So students are simply unable to take action on the feedback and move their performance and understanding closer to the learning goal. So what do we mean by that? The feedback addresses a weakness that learner might perceive as one that simply can't be changed. So if we're providing feedback, if we go back a layer, we're providing feedback that they simply can't decode, they don't understand the vocabulary that we're using, they don't understand the terminology that we're using, and then we even use that complex language and terminology on an aspect of the work or the performance that the student demonstrated, that they feel like they simply don't have the skill set to improve that. Now we're creating a huge barrier and a huge obstacle for the student to get closer to that learning target. So how might we overcome this? If we're going to point out a gap in the work that they've created, a gap in their understanding, or a distance between where they are and where we need them to end up, we also have to provide them with the specific action that can be taken, the process they can use, the strategy or the technique or the guidance that they need to actually make that a change that can be actionable by the learner inside of the work that they're creating for us. And then barrier or challenge number 3 is agency. So the feedback that we're providing is in a way that makes it challenging to apply by the learner. The learner may feel a sense of demotivation by the feedback provided and the structure it was provided with. So we have to be really careful that we can't always point out things that need correction. We can't always point out inaccuracies in the work. And we talked about this in part 3 of the video series, where we always have to be careful to make sure we're addressing what the student should continue to do that's already evidenced in their work, their understanding, their process, things they should stop doing, right? And then things they need to start doing. If we simply provide that corrective feedback, then the student might feel a sense of demotivation, might feel like they can't apply that because it's pointed out simply what's missing or what the deficit is with their work. And if we pair that corrective feedback with what's going well to continue and what they can do next, then there's some agency we're creating in the learner, and they can use those ideas to, again, lessen that gap and bring them closer to that learning target. So thanks for watching part 4 in this video series, where we explored obstacles that you might typically face from the learner perspective when they're receiving our feedback. So when you're ready to progress and move forward, go ahead and click on part 5 of the video series, and I'll see you in the next step of this Feedback Masterclass by Mote.